So I'm going to talk through basically as many of the knots that I'd trust my life to as I can remember off the top of my head. Yeah, so basically climbing, a little bit of maybe some knots I'd use canyoning or abseiling. But let's start with a figure 8 on the bite because it's pretty simple. This is a bight of rope, a loop of rope. You bend it, goes around. Now if you go in the back there, that's an overhand on the bight. Yep, that's about as simple as a knot can get. But if you go around one more time and back in the front, that's a figure 8. Now you can use that and you can clip through a carabiner. And you could trust your life on that without any trouble. But if you wanted to, if you make sure your carabiner locks, but if you wanted to re-thread this figure 8 onto your harness, it's a slightly different process. So you take a little bit of tail, an arm length to the center of your chest, so it's about there, maybe a little bit less, and you tie a figure 8, not on the bight, but just a figure 8, so around, right around, back in the back. So that's a figure 8. Now if I thread this through my harness, or it could be through an anchor, through a ring bolt, and then I re-thread the figure of 8. So I come back in the way that it came out and I follow it back through. So there's double ropes the whole way. And I want it nice and snug against my harness. And I just follow this. So there's two around there. Now there's 2 there, 2 there. One comes over and back out that side. Snug it up so it's nice and neat. Not too much crushing over each other. So 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay, so that's the re-threaded figure of 8. And that's like how you normally tie into your harness for climbing. Okay, so a few other things that are well worth knowing. One is clove hitch. So onto a carabiner, if I take a loop of rope and another loop of rope and I cross them like that, so that that outside loop goes between the 2 loops. Yeah. If I then clip that, as it pulls, so if this pulls, it cinches down and tightens on itself. And that I would trust my life to. If this was onto an anchor, I can tie it like that, and it's good because it's quite adjustable. So if I pull the middle of it, and I get to the position I want to be on, and then I cinch it up, it's quite easily adjustable. Now, the thing you want to be a little bit careful of is that under extreme pressure, it could start to slide. So you want a decent amount of tail on here, maybe a stopper knot, but best practice would definitely be putting a figure 8 back into another carabiner or back into the carabiner, so that you've got another solid attachment below it. But at the very least, lots of tail. You don't want that tail to be able to slide into the knot. So while we're on hitches, the Monte hitch is a knot that you can actually use as to descend on if you're abseiling, or as a belay device. I say device, but a belay knot. So it's much like the clove hitch, but even simpler. So you make a loop, and then you fold the loop over, and then you clip both sides of that. So there we go. Okay, so for this one, here's my tension, here's my brake side, and as I feed a little bit gently, this will gently slide. But if I lock that, and it's different to most brake devices because your hand comes up to lock it a little bit, as your hand comes up, that will cinch up this knot, and it's very easy. It's no problem to hold your weight with that. Very simple. And there it goes again. So as it feeds back the other way, it will flip through and reverse. So now we're going back the other way. So that's a really good knot. You can use that knot on a double rope. It would be put quite a lot of twist into the rope though, which is really the only drawback with that one. So just briefly, I'm going to talk about joining ropes. So if you're abseiling off a high abseil, you might need to join two ropes together at the anchor and then pull the end back down through. So I think the overhand knot that we talked about a minute ago is definitely pretty standard. And when ropes are the same size like this, the same diameter, really just having a nice long tail through, round and through, and you just kind of dress that so that it's got nowhere to move. Now, the way this one fails under extreme weights is that you're pulling like this. You thread one side through the anchor and you'd be abseiling off both ropes with the anchor here. Yeah, so it's being pulled apart here. So the way that it fails, if it does, is this rope goes over here. So if you're on two different sized strands of rope, you put the smaller one so that it needs to get over the bigger one to fail, which is incredibly unlikely. So you can use that to abseil on, and that's probably the best one because you can tie a double fisherman's. I won't demonstrate that, but it's just bigger, bulkier, more likely to snare on the way down, and more complex to tie and unnecessary. Some people do a backup for this, but if you've got a goodly amount of tail, it's just not necessary. Anyone think of any useful knots that I've missed? Prusik. We should talk about Prusik knots. I'm going to find a Prusik loop. Alrighty, so I'm really quickly going to set up a couple of Prusik knots. Let's talk through the actual knots. Maybe I'll make another video about how to Prusik, because it really can be a life-saving skill. Not so much on a sports crag climbing like this, but out abseiling it can really make a difference. But Prusik knots allow you to climb a rope. So let's just really quickly show you that. And here we're on two ropes, and probably the easiest one just goes around. Now, if I put a rope through its own loop like that, that's a girth hitch. And girth hitches are really useful. You could sling a tree with an anchor. I've got a girth hitch here for my little tag line for clipping onto things. So it just girth hitched through the two main loops of my harness. So girth hitch, but now if I go around again, and again I go through that loop, so it's like a double girth hitch. To me, this is the most basic Prusik knot, and I'm just going to neaten it up a little bit. Now I'm going to see if that can cinch in. So you see that as I pull, it cinches in on the rope. Now, thin ropes, you might need to go around again. And you just want to make sure you dress it so that it sits nice and neat. You see that's all nicely layered over itself. And as I pull there, it just cinches up and locks in on the rope. So now what I can do is I can step into that, and I can step up on this rope Now let's not do that yet. Let's get another one. Now I'll show you a slightly different knot. This one's a clem heist, but it's also a Prusik knot. So you just wrap it around, wrap it up, and then back through there. These funny pre-sealed ropes are a little strange to work with, but it'll work. And I'm going to clip that to my harness. Now, what I might do is I might back up my foot loop as well. So this is going to be in case so that I have two solid points of backup. So I'm just going to put a knot in my foot loop. So that's why I have different lengths of Prusik knot. Now I'll just put a girth hitch through there. And now I'm just going to clip that down to my harness. And that's going to be, in case I fall out of this one, I'm actually attached to this one as well, so that as I shimmy up the rope, here's me shimmying up the rope, this ain't going to be good, especially with no shoes on. I should have put this one over top of the other one. Let me come down and rejig it. It's not quite long enough, that one. Probably would have been better on the blue. We'll live and learn. It's not going to give me as much. If you can rig this so that you've got plenty of reach with each step of the way, it's a lot easier to make progress. I reckon the blue one would have been the one to go with, but all right, let's see. So now I'm hanging in one and I slide the other, and let's see if I can break it by just folding back on the loop. And now I'm sitting in that one. I break the back of it by pulling back on the loop so it's loose. You do have to take your weight off it though to do that. So now I'm hanging in this one. I'll step up onto the green. Sorry, I don't have a lot of control over which way I'm hanging. Okay, so now I'm hanging in the black. I'll step onto the green. Okay, so now I'm hanging in the black, and that's Prusiking. It's a lot easier with shoes on. That can save your life if you head off an abseil and you realise the ropes don't reach the ground and you have to climb back up the rope. That's a situation where you really want to be able to make sure you can move up and down the rope, and that's how you do it. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's worth setting up a big rope and Prusiking 60 metres up a whole cliff just for the practice. It is definitely the kind of thing you need to practice when it's not an emergency, so that you can do it kind of fairly automatically under pressure. I can't think of any others. There's probably a few that I wouldn't use so much anymore, like bowlines. Are just more complicated to tie, but are good for tying around a tree for an anchor. I think that'll do for today, but if you made it this far, well done. Just remember to practice, 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 practice. Cheers.